Hello, my name is Dawa. I am a monk here at SokukoJi. If you are inspired by these talks and these teachings, please consider joining us for our other forums, online or in person, and also consider helping us financially. We could use your support if you are able. Thank you.
Good evening. Hope everyone is relatively well. I'll be talking about something called the 4 reminders. Sometimes it's called the 4 reminders that turn the mind toward the Dharma. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Okay. Or the 4 thoughts that turn the mind toward the Dharma. It's translated differently. This was one of the first teachings that I received from Sokuzan when I first started meditating 25 years ago. I believe he wrote it out by hand in capital letters, and I still have it somewhere back in Minnesota. But it meant a lot to me. As he currently suggests, it's a good thing to contemplate upon waking up, but anytime is also good. The 4 reminders, if you search online, it's usually attributed to Atisha in the 11th century, and then Gampopa kind of elaborated. But it was already in Padmasambhava's teachings a couple hundred years before that. So this keeps popping up when I'm seeing what teachings are attributed to what teacher, especially on social media. It's not always the case. But anyway, those 3 guys are pretty smart. So I might just focus on the first one. And I feel that the first reminder somewhat contains all 4. And like a lot of these Buddhist lists, when you study the separation of them, they tend to kind of point to each other or become kind of one thing for me. So the first one has to do with the preciousness of human birth. And this ties in a little bit to Yudao's teaching a couple nights ago on the realms. Traditionally, there's the 6 realms, and then there's the 3 realms, all these different realms. And within the 6 realms that she talked about the other night, the human realm is said to be the best for realizing what this is, based on the idea that there's enough kind of ease of suffering, but it's not perfectly great either. There's enough suffering to keep us from floating off into the God realm, or something like that. So I'll read it here. This is something you could contemplate. Traditionally, in certain practices, you would contemplate each of the 4 reminders for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on what your teacher asks you to do. So it says, first, contemplate the preciousness of being free and well-favored. This is difficult to gain, easy to lose. Now I must do something meaningful. So this is a reminder. And I take that to mean somewhat that we already know this. It's reminding us of this. I often ignore this, so maybe that's why I need this reminder. But the preciousness of being free and well favored. So to start with, if you're born a human, that's the start. You're not a crocodile, which, they have their life. Billions of insects. There's all these life forms that, from a traditional standpoint, consciousness could be born into any of these forms. You could just contemplate the multitude of living beings that are conscious. And from that contemplation, maybe with a little help from these Tibetan guys and girls, there are texts that expound on this in great detail. So the one way that it's categorized, and this is described in many different ways, but my favorite is the likelihood of being born as a human. You would imagine a large planet somewhere, completely covered in ocean, very deep ocean. And on the surface of that ocean is a garland of flowers, maybe be that big around. And in that ocean, there's a sea turtle that comes up to breathe air every 1,000 years. And so the likelihood that the turtle pokes its head through that garland of flowers is the same likelihood of being born a human. So that's kind of a poetic way of describing it. And that story is changed in all kinds of different ways. Sometimes it's not an ocean planet. Sometimes they'll say 100 years or 10 million years. But I think you get the point. So just being born a human. And then on top of that, you have senses. Maybe you're not in a war zone. So this is getting into free and well favored. A human who is relatively safe, has food and water, shelter, clothing, maybe other humans to interact with. And then beyond that, as a Buddhist, we say, if you're a human with all these things supporting your consciousness and you happen to bump into a Dharma book or a Dharma teacher, or even just someone mentions a Dharmic idea, this gets into the realm of being free and well favored as a human. And it says this is difficult to gain, easy to lose. So I talked about difficult to gain, and easy to lose kind of leans into the second of the four reminders, which talks about impermanence. We talk a lot about this body dying, and that moment of death can be kind of intense. Since we don't know what happens, it can bring a lot of fear of the unknown. However, I think it's important to contemplate that, but also that we're constantly dying throughout this life. I was walking to my car just a few minutes ago, rushing here from work, and it's very cold out. Is the car going to start? It did. What a relief. Or you reach into your purse or your back pocket and your wallet's gone. And the person at the coffee shop swears they didn't steal it. Which happened in Minnesota. That was really frustrating. So all the deaths that we encounter throughout life. So why is it telling us this? We already know this, but it's a reminder. Practice when you can, when the conditions are such that you can actually practice. If my car hadn't started, I'd be calling someone to come and help, and I would not be here giving this talk, practicing, talking about the Dharma. That'd be fine. There's a lot of teaching happening in that situation. I might even endeavor to say that after sitting for 25 years, I freak out less when things like that happen and seem to be able to function better in high stress situations. So am I improving? I don't know. And that's now I must do something meaningful at the end of this first reminder. If you find yourself in a situation where you're relatively taken care of by causes and conditions, and you have a path, in this situation, a teacher, a teaching, and a community, to realize that it's valuable. And that could be a very selfish way to look at it in a way, but it's also, you're really not separate from everything you're in contact with. So using that time to look at what this is ends up being beneficial for everyone, including your future self, your past self, if those even exist. We talk about the karma. The third one is about karma. And sometimes we talk about past lives and karma, and how I feel there's a misunderstanding where traditionally, if you are experiencing negativity, they will say it was a past life action that led to this current negativity. And people get pissed off about that sometimes. And maybe they should. I think the misunderstanding there is that there's an actual self in either one of those situations. So it's more like out of dependent origination that we're all dependently arisen. So you're receiving negativity that's showing up in the situation. It doesn't mean you were personally someone in a past life who did that and now you're being punished for it. but I've heard it taught that way. So I'm taking a little bit of issue with that. So just to outline the four reminders briefly. The first one is preciousness of human birth. The second one talks about impermanence, things dying, falling apart. The third one is emphasizing karma, in that there's always something arising, and then action out of whatever's arising, creating more karma. And then the fourth is called the defects of samsara. So when you really look at samsara closely, you can have revulsion in response to that. And all of these are meant to emphasize why one would meditate and practice and continue this path. So I'm leaving a lot out there so that we can, let's see if there's any questions. Dawa.
You were talking about karma as punishment. And so if we have good karma, we would think we're being rewarded. Is that a literal thing of, can we see that? Can we say, oh, this is a result of these good things that I did, or some kind of merit I achieved, or this is a result of that bad thought I had?
Well, there's no I there. So there's no one to see it. It's a way of talking about it, I think. It's a little bit speculative. But I would really like to emphasize, when we talk about karma, to consider that there's no person, there's no I, there's no identity. So it's just something that doesn't feel great. It's just something that does feel great. And just based on what these teachers are saying, you could consider that it came from a situation that was positive or negative, relatively speaking, from the point of view of how we experience situations. I don't even know what I just said, that, but something in that area. More?
And a lot of times Buddhism talks about gaining merit. And then I've also heard that your karma can come out of the way distant past, like the 4th century. So is there a way, is it even helpful to look at causes when it comes to karma?
Is it helpful? It has been for me. I guess an example I can give is being in a very painful situation for a few years that seemed to exclude my ability to practice and study. But I snuck it in here and there with a little bit of the idea of this. It's almost like holding a little fire in my heart, just a little flame. Everything keeps trying to blow it out, but that I want to get back to that. So, and the suffering is kind of what fuels that too. If you're suffering intensely, over the years, I come back to Dharma more quickly each time the suffering arises. It seems to be the only way to really relate to it. Does that answer your question?
Actually, yes. So,
Kandrama.
Chandra bowing along those same lines, the first reminders is saying, now I must do something meaningful. It's kind of this out of gratitude or something that we're responding by doing something meaningful. How do you understand that phrase and that reminder, bowing?
How do I understand now I must do something meaningful? It's kind of set up to just say practice and study a lot when you can, but contemplating it today, I think you can even take it further. And I think many of us do. You're standing in line at the post office. It's a very, very long line, and maybe you have remembered some Dharma or your teacher's words, or you're doing alternating sense awareness practice. So it comes back to, I don't like the word meaningful personally, and using value judgments and things like that, but I don't know how else to talk about it. Because you can also just space out and entertain yourself. And maybe you need to. Maybe you've had a rough day. So it's kind of just checking in for me, checking in and what could I be doing right now that's connected with my path or the vow. That's a good touchstone. And that might be checking in and saying, nope, I have to think about this other thing. But there's kind of I'll get back to that as soon as I can kind of idea. More.
Chandra bowing, there are a couple strong words in that phrase, like now and must.
Yeah.
How do you interpret those, bowing?
I just want to say it's the Tibetans, but it could be the translation. They're pretty intense about their practices. Hundreds of thousands and millions of things. And there's probably an urgency. I think if you contemplate these quite a bit, some urgency might come up. To the point of maybe even getting a little neurotic about, "Oh, I've got to sign up for this retreat and I got to go do that," and almost like a fix-it mentality. So, which is maybe what you need to see. Maybe this triggers it. I mean, because this is stuff I like to ignore, uh, these reminders. So when I contemplate them, stuff can come up, and then it's not always doesn't always look like the path.
Chandra bowing, that phrase, now I must do something meaningful, just seems so provisional. Would you have any comment on that, bowing?
I think I would call this a provisional teaching. I mean, if you study it a lot, I think you can find the ultimate in it, but it does seem to be more toward the beginning of just uncovering a lot of things that we take for granted. Now I must do something meaningful. I mean, it's almost scolding and parental. I don't know. Maybe we need that.
Chandra bowing, that brings up though, how do we work with provisional teachings? Bowing.
How do we work with provisional teachings? I guess the way I work with them is I contemplate them, I let them irritate me, or not that I let them, I just notice I'm irritated or disagree with something. often I can sense it might be the translation, or I just think of it as like maybe that sentence, now I must do something meaningful. I just can't click with that. You know, maybe I contemplate this for 10 years and I'm just like, I say that every time I study it, but it doesn't work for me. But other teachings work, or as a way of talking about it. There's so many teachings, so I don't think they're all going to click for everyone. Yes, so
Is there a teaching without provisions? If so, could you say something about it? Provisionally, of course.
it doesn't seem like it. It seems like if there's a teaching, it's already stepping away from what this is. So I guess I'm saying everything is provisional from maybe an ultimate understanding. Everything is pointing. That's what came up when you asked the question.
Thank you.
Elena?
Elena bowing. The four reminders always remind me of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And when I was listening to one of the translations, it talks about how everything we do in life is to just prepare us to die. And I can't help but think, like, what do they mean? Like, what is meaningful? What do they mean by do something meaningful exactly? Bowing.
Yeah, that's a good question. In this context, they mean practice, study. It's there are very long texts that go into each one of these and talk about what's meaningful. So they lay it out for you.
Oh, okay.
So what we're doing here, and if that's not what it means to you, that's okay. That's my understanding of that. Is there any more there?
Thank you.
Milka?
Milka bowing. First, what is important about this? Is there the importance of this particular one being first, or is it just part of the list?
I was wondering about that as well. I think it is important that it's first. Just that we get right down to there's this body here. Somehow it got here. And like I said earlier, that in itself is quite rare. If we look at how many species are even on this planet, not to mention, are there other dimensions? Are there other planets with life? All that stuff. But even just on this planet, you could be born according to the way this system looks to me and the way I've studied it. You could be born as any of those conscious beings. And it's said that we have been many, many times. And we may be again. So if I think I might be born as a donkey next life, if I had that information, I'd probably even dig into this even more. But it's not even that simple.
Milka bowing. It sounds like, and you alluded to this earlier, that the kind of the who question is what's shown up in this for you. Is there, what is the who question of who this is pointing at that seems helpful to look at on the path?
I feel it's helpful to look at who you think you are. So the ideas, the thoughts, the emotions, the preferences, whatever is arising that we kind of automatically lace together as an identity. And to, what a great teaching that you don't have to change any of that, that we just want to see it clearly, even if it's confused, so that you're not deluded by the confusion. You're just seeing confusion clearly. It can be confused, but there's not this like complete belief in I'm this kind of person, that kind of person, and I've always been that way, or I'm making a big change, and we get all these credentials for getting better or getting worse. The three poisons.
Yokabali, I'm thinking about the second tenet. The form consciousness finds is empty as it appears and full as it is. In that who question, or in looking at who we are, what is the full as it is in that?
For me right now, the way that what comes up when you ask that is just the sense perceptions. So like shapes, colors, sounds, but there's a not knowing what they are kind of quality, flashes of that. So that can happen here and out there. And even if a storyline comes up, there's a curiosity around, what triggered that, or there's an awareness around that without believing in it. In contrast to having something come up and completely believing in it, not being aware that I'm believing in it, and then having that bubble popped later.
Thank you.
Udo.
Did you read the second one yet?
No. Would you like me to?
Yes.
Second, the world and its inhabitants are impermanent. In particular, the life of beings is like a bubble. Death comes without warning. This body will be a corpse. At that time, the Dharma, the truth, will be my only help. I must practice it with exertion. Erlon.
On bowing. I feel like it's been talked about where like we have to go do the practice, like now I must do something meaningful. And I think you've said it a few times, like you have to return over these different periods, like return to the practice. And I'm thinking of like recently when Sokuzan said, like if you're my paraphrase, a seasoned practitioner and something difficult comes up and our first response is I need to go sit with this, then something's fishy. So I'm wondering, like in that sense, does the practice ever become like what's showing up? Like just trying to understand more about that idea that we're needing to go back to it. And what does it mean to leave the practice?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good area. I think it becomes more like there's no one returning. It just kind of shows up. It's almost like just on the spot. You can just be aware, or there's no one being aware. So it's like it's already happened. It's almost before the thought. Um, yeah, thinking that you need to take something to the cushion could be a part on our place on the path that we are sometimes. Then again, we could watch that, especially if we have a teacher guiding us through that. Is there any more around that?
While I'm bowing. I guess to ask it this way, if we're practicing, we have a daily sitting practice and we're still having difficulty in the midst of our like job or going to the store, is our practice not working, or is there anything we're doing wrong? Maybe to ask it another way. What are we practicing for if we still have to come back and practice more?
Good question. Maybe we don't. It seems like an intuitive area where I don't have confidence that I see what this is. And I know that when I return to formal practice, when that's available, that shows up in what we would call post meditation, I suppose. And that barrier starts to get flimsy. The practice just starts showing up. It's hard to talk about though. It's like, it's not particularly a credential. It doesn't necessarily feel better. It's a lot of not knowing happening there. And receiving. Yeah.
Maybe my question is just around that word meaningful, and like where through the teaching that might mean go practice. But is it saying that the things that we do in life that aren't practiced aren't meaningful?
Yeah. It kind of is saying that in a traditional way, and then I'm bringing it to what could you do in this moment that's meaningful. So like the example of the post office, or you're in the car, wherever you are, there's so many techniques to work with awareness. So maybe like I said, maybe it's just as soon as you're halfway through that thought, you're already just aware. There's already awareness. It's almost like the awareness showed you that you weren't aware. And there's no you. So good luck. Any more in that area?
Thank you.
You don't?
Dawa, the second reminder, I think I wanted to hear that because it seems to give some meaning to the first one, if we didn't think we were going to be reborn in some way, would it be important to do something meaningful?
Yes. Even, this is my point of view on it, even if you were gonna live forever, the way our lives currently work, that's why I was saying there's all these deaths we encounter. So having some practice that helps us work with that space that we're afraid of, I guess, the fear, would be meaningful. Chishi.
Bowing. When I'm looking at the description of 4 reminders, it says below the 4 reminders that turn the mind toward the Dharma. And in the second reminder, Sokuzan clarified Dharma as the truth. I'm wondering, since this path is about wanting to know the truth, how those reminders can help us to turn our mind towards the truth. And I'm aware that you already gave a lot of examples how to do it, but I feel like asking that question anyway. Bowing.
Thank you for your question. These reminders help us look at things we are ignoring and taking for granted most of the time. Like if you watch your mind or just reflect on going to get groceries or something, how much of that time were you aware that you have a precious human birth? I know I probably 0% for me. Impermanence might be a little bit more in some of our faces, but even that is, we don't really go there. And karma too, and then the defects of samsara we kind of ignore by just trying to get more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff, and then ignore as much as possible to keep those two going. So for me, even though we call this a provisional teaching, it's rooting out a lot of stuff that we really, I like the phrase take for granted. It supports our ignorance and our identity. Any more in there?
Jishin Bowing, thank you. You used the word defects of samsara, and I think you used them before when you were describing the 4th reminder. What do you mean by the defects of samsara, first of all? Bowing.
Maybe I should have just read all of these. It says, 4th, the homes, friends, wealth, and comforts of samsara are the constant torment of the 3 sufferings. So that's the first half. Just homes, friends, wealth, and comforts right there. You have a home, something's broken all the time. You always have to fix it. It's constantly, it keeps you warm and safe, but a flood comes and destroys it. Friends turn into enemies. Wealth, material wealth comes and goes. And so it's just like a feast before some kind of death occurs, which could be the friend turning into an enemy or car accident. And the last part there is I will observe desire and attachment and attain enlightenment through exertion. Again, that's a little bit parental and saying like, I'm going to value this time where I can actually practice and I'm going to utilize it to train my mind. Maybe that's a good way to say this. So it's not that there isn't a lot of beauty and sacredness and wonderful things we can experience. It's that we completely buy into it and then we get blindsided when the coin flips, I guess. The three sufferings are in there, pain of alternation, the three poisons are running rampant. So all these other teachings kind of link into the four reminders. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you. Sukhand said today that passion is not grasping, that it is not separate from its opposite. I'm wondering how we can look at the defects of samsara in that way, that they are not separate. Bowing.
I'm having trouble tracking the question. If you could refine it a little bit.
Jishin Bowing, when I'm hearing defects of samsara and the way you described, it seems to me that I see only one side of what is happening, and I'm labeling it in a certain way, and as a result, I'm caught in that observation with this kind of label. So I'm wondering how can we look at what is happening, as which we label as a defect of samsara, in a way that we see it as not separate from the opposite of what is happening.
I would say that's jumping the gun a little bit. And we should just stay with, if you're doing a formal contemplation of the four reminders, that's the time to look at the defects. Or if life is just a lot of suffering and not much joy for a while, that's your opportunity to look deeply into that suffering. Suffering and pleasure, we don't have any control over all of that. So it's like whatever is arising. I mean, I'm repeating what we're always saying here: receive, observe. So you can see for yourself they're not separate without some kind of conceptual, someone telling you to see it that way. That's what comes up when you ask that question.
Thank you.
Chandrama.
Chandrama Bowing, you just said go deeper. Would you explore going deeper? What that might look like, Bowing?
What did I say? Go deeper into the suffering?
Chandrama Bowing, I was also applying it to like when we contemplate one of these four reminders, like impermanence or the idea of karma. How do we go? It's easy to just say, all right, this is impermanence, right? And look for examples of impermanence in our life, or look for this idea of how we relate with karma. But there seems to be so much more. How can we lift that label and go deeper? Bowing.
Thank you. That's a good question. What I mean by that is, from my experience, spending, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of 5-minute sessions contemplating these. Of course, I have them memorized, but I have to say them really fast. That's why I need the paper here to slow me down. But I can recite them anywhere. So I can contemplate them on the train or the airplane. And throughout different times of life, there's just some truth there that's really powerful. And then it kind of becomes part of you, like your own understanding of that. So that seems to be, if you value Buddhist teachings, that's probably the direction you want to head in, where it's, I mean, the only reason you even, I don't like the word resonate, but we resonate with things because we already, it's already in us, is how it seems to me. Any more?
So you mentioned about the garland of flowers in the ocean, a traditional example of the possibility of having a human birth, I think it was. Is that and so I was wondering, likelihood, I think that was a word, it was the likelihood of that tortoise or turtle coming up in the middle, his head coming up. And that was what was the time frame there? That was once every 1,000 years, or is that it?
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering what the likelihood of becoming a turtle was.
It's a good question. It might be the same.
And was he hired to do that? Thank you. Apologize for my silliness.
I appreciate silliness. Elena.
Elena bowing. I recently put the 4 reminders on my shrine at home, but I didn't understand the 4th one, the feast before the executioner. I don't understand that part. Could you explain that to me, please, Bowing?
What's something that you really like to do? Or something in your life that's just like your favorite?
Shopping.
Shopping? Okay. So I just gave you, was it the black credit card? I don't know what it is these days. And real fancy chauffeur, you can go anywhere and shop. You just shopping your face off. So exciting, so fun, excellent. Like, just imagine all the things. I am too, actually. Yeah. So fun,
Go on.
so exciting. Yeah, yeah. And then it's like, maybe it's not even death. Maybe it's just someone spreads a rumor about you and it sticks and everything's taken away. You're locked in a cell and you wish you could die. So like that happens all the time.
Very good example.
And Elena Bowing, can you read it one more time so
Yeah.
I can put it together?
4th, the homes, friends, wealth, and comforts of samsara are the constant torment of the 3 sufferings. Just like a feast before the executioner leads you to your death, I will observe desire and attachment and attain enlightenment through exertion.
Thank you.
And it's, as I'm reading it, we talk about samsara in these traditional teachings, and I think we automatically stamp it as negative, but it doesn't appear that way all the time. we're seduced into it. That's my experience. Time for one or two more.
When you were talking about taking things for granted, can that become a credential for us?
How can you say more?
It was in reference to something that you had said earlier about looking at these reminders and taking them for granted. And I was hoping that like more would come out of that, but is there some way that we can use that as a credential?
Let's see. I'm trying to go there with you. I think our credentials are probably based on ignoring this. I don't know if that's the area you're going in.
That, okay, I mean, that's helpful, just saying the ignoring. It seems like there's something there about taking something like that for granted or not. Or is taking that for granted, ignoring.
Yeah. I think so. And that reminds me though that we're always getting credentials, even like, have you done 2 block sits in a day before? You've done solitary retreat, right?
Yeah.
Credential? I've done solitary retreat. But you don't get rid of that. You get to be with that. Feel proud of yourself that you survived it or made it through or had insight or whatever it is. And there's a tendency to not want to be prideful or have pride or look prideful. Which I think credentials, that's a good area to look at that. Is any more coming up in that area? SokukoJi.
So are you saying that when pride shows up and we see that we're full of pride, that we shouldn't stop being prideful?
If we can see it.
Really?
I'm not sure. I feel like we're usually blinded and we can't see our pride. So it usually we see it out of some surprise.
So can we see our pride? How does it look to you?
I have things I'm proud of that I look at.
You know what I mean, though. I'm not talking about things you're proud of. It's a very strong relativity happening there. Proud of your sons, you're proud of your whatever accomplishments, whatever, but just a fundamental pride, the one that Padmasambhava talks about as being the final Dharma gate.
Mm.
That particular pride, if I may say so, does not shift around. It's not permanent either, but it's a very strong protective shield against the illusion of an ego.
Do you want me to answer still? I don't know, because I don't think I'm realized. I don't think we can see that. That would be my guess, that it would. That kind of pride that you're speaking of, Padmasambhava, pointing to, if it's the last thing to go, it seems like there would be no one to see it go.
Thank you.
Erlon.
Long bowing. I felt like you pointed out, or we had a conversation in an area that I did something like this that felt like it might have answered this question. Do you remember that?
No.
And I'm not saying it's that final gate, but when I popped off on someone a few years ago and I was talking with you, like how in the midst of me like screaming, I wasn't like hurt, and like I was really suspicious that like I felt good and like didn't notice anything bad happening. You asked me if that was pride. So I'm wondering if that's a way we can see it through like ignorance or something like that. Or if that resonates with the question.
Yeah, the way that you described, like an unquestioning, almost a righteousness, completely justified. That's what made me think that you were seeing some kind of pride. I don't know that it would be that final one, but something.
Yeah, righteousness. I remember you bringing up that word.
Jishin.
Jishin, it just came out of that last exchange about final gate and pride. I'm wondering if, but I'm not getting an answer to the question which Sokuzan asked you. But I'm wondering if people go through that final gate, are they still triggers happening? So what would happen to that pride, that final pride, if this is still appearing in the person who is awakened and lives in both worlds? Bowing.
I don't know. I really don't know. What I think about it is that the person can function with the pride there or right out of the pride. And I'm taking a little bit of what Sokuzan has said at times, that he can teach right out of pride. And I sense that from Padmasambhava and many of these other teachers as well. I don't know if that's what they call Vajra pride. So I'm speculating, but that's kind of where I go with that area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's 7:05. We can dedicate the merit. Thank you.
Thank you.